Before the next episode of X Job Downloaded starts, I have a big favour to ask. If you've enjoyed any of our episodes so far, please can you click on the follow button on your platform. I'm on Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon and YouTube. It costs nothing to follow, but makes a real difference to me as a podcast producer. Thank you.
And part of this podcast for me is putting that right a bit. Now Brixton's not a safe place, as you would imagine, to be a cop.
No.
But actually, I went from there to South Norwood, which is an ordinary suburb, not far away from Brixton, but it doesn't have the kudos of Brixton. And I went there as an inspector, and eventually after a short time, I was a relief inspector, a shift inspector, so I had my own team. Because they were changing the systems constantly, and they'd gone from what they call geographic policing to back to team policing, and I had my own team as an inspector. And as an inspector, during that 18-month period, I personally was faced with a man with a knife on 8 occasions. Now, I'm not patrolling as often as the constables and sergeants, and I hadn't really had that experience as a PC or a sergeant. And then all of a sudden, South Norwood seemed to be a really dangerous place. And in fact, quite early in my period as a team leader, Derek Robertson was a sergeant, one of my sergeants, and he was murdered. He went to a post office robbery early in the morning, just on a weekday. And it turned out that the robbers had broken in through the ceiling into the post office, and they decamped out the back door, and Derek, armed with a wooden stick, bit them off and was stabbed to death as a result.
Wow.
So very dangerous, very difficult to deal with for anybody. But Derek was a really nice bloke. I really got on with him really well. But all of a sudden, this happened. And obviously that has affected me as anybody who deals with a traumatic situation. And it's not something that I'll forget. We all need to realise that could happen to police officers at any point, and suddenly it did.
But you're expected the very next day or that very afternoon just to crack on with it.
I had a team. I had to carry on managing. During that process in the weeks that followed.
How do you deal with that type of situation? Because you're trying to manage a team. They are going to be absolutely distraught because their skipper's been murdered, and you've got to lead. You're the captain of the ship at the end of the day. All the admirals are sitting up in the ivory tower, and you're the one who's trying to steer everybody to safe waters. How was that for the team?
Yeah, in fairness to the admirals, I think that and all of situations like that do affect everybody at every rank. So everybody's affected to a bit, but when it affects you so very closely, you simply have to look after people and look after yourself, and recognise that you're going through a process which doesn't feel natural, but your body and your mind will have a natural reaction to it, and you won't be fixed in a straight line, but you will be fixed eventually through time. And I think the occupational health that the Met provided was actually very, very good. And I learned a lot through that process of dealing with traumatic incidents, not just affecting the police. People I deal with in my family and friends over the years, everybody has their traumas to deal with, and I'm much better at providing support.
That's really refreshing to hear, actually, because sometimes the occupational health, they're very well-meaning, but they're not always the best resource. I don't know why, because they're there to provide that support, but they don't always achieve what they set out to do.